She didn't see him walk in. Her hands were shaking, eyes red, barely holding them together behind register 3. But when the CEO stopped mid-aisle, staring at her tear-streaked face, the store fell silent. He asked a single question, and what he learned next left him speechless and furious. This wasn't a breakdown. This was a breaking point, years in the making. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and for the first time someone in power was finally paying attention. This is the story of the day everything changed at Greystone Market. If this story has your attention, please click the like button to keep the stories flowing. It was just past 10 a.m. on a rainy Thursday when Alana adjusted her name badge and stepped behind the checkout counter. The smell of fresh produce and floor wax filled the store, and fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as customers trickled in. For most shoppers, it was just another stop on a grocery run. But for Alana, it was a test of endurance, another shift behind the register at Greystone Market, where her smile had become a shield and silence her only armor. Alana had worked at this suburban supermarket for nearly 3 years. Quiet, consistent, and always early, she rarely drew attention to herself. Raised by a single mother in a nearby, working-class neighborhood, she knew the value of showing up, even when it hurt. Her job wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. She stocked shelves, scanned items, bagged groceries, and kept her head down, even when the comments got under her skin, even when they called her ghetto for wearing her natural curls, even when they complained her tone was too aggressive, when she simply said, "Next in line." She had dreams once. Nursing school maybe, or opening a skincare brand inspired by her grandmother's homemade shea butter. But life had bills, and those dreams waited in the margins of her paycheck. That morning something was different. Her eyes were puffy as if sleep hadn't come easily. Her voice cracked as she greeted the first few customers. A few noticed, but no one asked. Not even her supervisor, who was more focused on keeping shelves orderly than the people who stocked them. And yet something was building behind Alana's tired smile. Something she had tried hard to bury. What no one knew was that by the end of that shift, Alana would become the center of a story no one in that store would forget. Because just as her tears began to fall, someone unexpectedly walked through those automatic doors, and everything changed. Alana was scanning produce when it happened. An elderly woman dressed in a beige coat and holding a designer bag stepped forward and narrowed her eyes. "You people never smile, do you?" she muttered, loud enough for the entire line to hear. Alana froze. Her hands trembled slightly as she weighed a bunch of bananas, her lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to say something, but she knew better. Responding could cost her job. Staying silent cost her dignity. The customer laughed to herself and continued unloading her cart. A manager nearby, Mr. Keith, pretended not to hear. He rarely got involved, especially when the customers looked like they had money. Alana continued ringing up the items, blinking back the sting in her eyes. But something cracked inside her. The next customer seemed uncomfortable, murmuring a quiet, "Sorry about that," without making eye contact. Then another incident. This time a teenager threw a crumpled $20 at her instead of handing it over. Her hands were shaking now. But still she smiled. That was when the call came in. HR had denied her request for schedule flexibility to care for her sick mother. Her voice broke as she tried to explain her situation over the phone. The answer was cold. Company policy. That was it. Alana hung up quietly. She stood behind the counter, the beep of the scanner echoing in her ears like a countdown. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it quickly, praying no one saw. But someone did. A small girl in line tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why's the lady crying?" That question hung in the air. Her manager glanced over, annoyed. "Alana, if you need a break, take it out of your lunch. We're short-staffed." She nodded, numb. She stepped away, retreating to the corner of the store near the supply room. Her hands covered her face as the tears finally spilled freely. That's when the doors chimed open. A tall man in an expensive navy coat entered the store, eyes scanning the aisles. He wasn't a regular customer. His face looked vaguely familiar, but no one recognized him right away, until Keith's eyes went wide. He rushed forward, Mr. Callahan, sir, we weren't expecting you today. Callahan, as in Daniel Callahan, the CEO of the entire Greystone market chain. I was in the area, he said calmly. Thought I'd do a drop-in. I like to see. The ground floor myself. Keith's smile was plastic. Of course, let me give you a tour. But before he could finish, Callahan turned and pointed. Who's that over there? Everyone turned to look. It was Alana, still in her uniform, wiping tears from her cheeks, trying to pull herself together. And in that moment, the power dynamics of the room shifted. Callahan walked straight toward Alana, ignoring the fumbling attempts of the manager to redirect him. She stood frozen as he approached, assuming she was about to be reprimanded for stepping away from the register. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Her throat tightened. She nodded. Then, slowly, she shook her head. Something about his tone, the rare sincerity in it, broke through her fear. "I'm just tired," she whispered. "Tired of being invisible, tired of being treated like I'm less." She didn't say everything, the microaggressions, the racism, the way her boss ignored it all, but her eyes said enough. The CEO looked around, saw the shift manager watching, awkwardly from the corner, saw the customers staring, saw the resignation on Alana's shoulders. Then he did something no one expected. He called for a staff meeting, right there, in the middle of the store. Managers were summoned, employees stood, awkwardly near the registers. And in front of all of them, Callahan pointed to Alana, not in shame but in recognition. "This woman is a human being," he said, "and if any part of this company made her feel otherwise, then we've failed." Silence. He turned to the manager. "I want a full report, every complaint, every ignored incident. And starting today, we review store culture from the ground up." It wasn't a solution, not yet. But it was a beginning. A single voice was finally heard. "Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments." Alana didn't expect miracles. Not from corporate, not from CEOs in designer coats. But when she returned to her shift the next day, something had shifted. A new supervisor was shadowing the team. A quiet audit was underway. HR had reopened her request for schedule flexibility, and this time they approved it. More importantly, employees began sharing their own experiences. Stories that had gone unspoken for years were suddenly brought to light, and while some doubted it would lead to lasting change, others felt hope for the first time in a long while. Alana stayed at Greystone for a few more months. Then one day she gave her notice, not out of frustration, but because she had been accepted into a local nursing program. "I saw how you handled that," Callahan had said, in a follow-up visit. "If you ever want to join our corporate diversity team, give me a call." She never did, because her story wasn't about rising through corporate ladders. It was about dignity, about the right to cry without fear, about being seen, not as a problem, not as a position, but as a person. And for once the world didn't look away. Racism doesn't always wear a uniform or shout slurs. Sometimes it hides behind silence, policy, and polite smiles. But when someone dares to speak, even with tears, truth has a way of making itself known. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and fresh videos.